Okay, so quickly let's go to verse 3. First Timothy chapter 6, verse 3. Let's read. If any man teach otherwise and consent not to wholesome words, even the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, and to the doctrine which is according to godliness. If any man teach otherwise and consent not to wholesome words, even the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, and to the doctrine which is according to godliness. So in verse 2, after Paul has told Timothy to teach and exhort, he says that if any man teach otherwise, meaning the things that he has said from verse 1 to verse 2 about the doctrine about service to mankind, if any man teaches otherwise. So in this particular verse, Paul was talking about the second problem, which is false teachers of the doctrine. So in this particular verse, Paul gave some three characteristics about false teachers in the church. And the first characteristic is that they advocate a different doctrine. False teachers always advocate different doctrine. He said that if any man teach otherwise, meaning different doctrine apart from what Paul has told them. So they advocate different doctrines. Let's read something in Galatians chapter 1 verse 6 to 9. Galatians chapter 1 verse 6 to 9 says that I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting the one who called you to live in the grace of Christ and are turning to a different different gospel, which is really no gospel at all. Evidently, some people are throwing you into confusion and are trying to perfect the gospel of Christ. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach a gospel other than the one we preach to you, let them be under God's curse. As we have already said, so now I say again, if anybody is preaching to you a gospel other than what you accepted, let them be under God's curse. So one of the characteristics of false teachers in this Asian church was that they advocate different doctrine. And Paul is saying that, as we have already said in verse 9, Galatians 1:9, he said that, so now I say again, if anybody is preaching to you a gospel other than what you accepted, let them be under God's case. So false teachers always advocate different doctrine. That's one characteristics in verse 1. If any man teach otherwise. Then the second one is, and consent not to wholesome words. False teachers, they do not agree with sound words. When they say sound words, they do not accept sound and healthy teaching, specifically the teaching contained in the scriptures. They do not agree with the sound and healthy teachings of the truth of the gospel. Let's read something in First Peter, Second Peter chapter 3 verse 16. Second Peter chapter 3 verse 16. Let's read from verse 15 to 16. Bear in mind that our Lord's patience means salvation, just as our dear brother Paul also wrote to you with the wisdom that God gave him. He writes the same way in all his letters, speaking in them of these matters. His letters contain some things that are hard to understand, which ignorant and unstable people distort, so as they do the other scriptures to their own destruction. So this is Peter recommending what Paul wrote in his letters, and he said that he writes the same way in all his letters, speaking in them of these matters of false teachers. His letter contains some teachings that are hard to understand, which ignorant and unstable people distort. Ignorant and unstable people mean talking about the false teachers. They distort it, so they do not agree. False teachers do not agree with sound words. which is in First Timothy 6 verse 3, and consent not to the wholesome. Now let's look at the last characteristics Paul was talking about false teachers. Even the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, and to the doctrine which is according to godliness. They reject doctrine conforming to godliness. When it comes to false teachers, they reject the doctrine that talks about, that conform to what? Godliness. Teaching not based on scriptures will always result in unholy life instead of godliness. False teachers would be marked by sin. Let's read something in second Peter chapter 10 verse 22. Second Peter chapter 2 verse 1 to 3. Second Peter chapter 2 verse 1 to 3. But there were also false prophets among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you. They will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the sovereign Lord who bought them, brings swift destruction on themselves. Many will follow their depraved conduct and will bring the way of truth into disrupt. In their greed, these teachers will exploit you with fabricated stories. Their condemnation has long been hanging over them, and their destruction has not been sleeping. So, one thing Paul was writing to Timothy to be aware of these false prophets is that these false prophets advocate different doctrine. The doctrine about service to mankind, slaves serving their masters. They do not agree with these words, and they reject the doctrine of godliness. These false teachers consent not to these things. So in this particular verse, Paul was giving us a lot of keywords. So let's look at some of the keywords I am actually looking. I actually got from this verse. Consent not. Consent not means that one does not agree with or adhere to. So these false teachers, they do not adhere, they do not agree with these teachings that Paul previously taught in verse 1 and in verse 2. And wholesome words, they do not consent to wholesome words. Wholesome words are teachings that are sound, correct, and that promote spiritual health, spiritual healthiness. They do not teach that teachings, the doctrines that promote spiritual healthiness, and doctrine which is according to godliness is doctrine that is in accord with and leads to godliness. I hope you get what I'm trying to say, that which is to the doctrine which is according to godliness. So false teachers, they always reject it. So these Judaizers, these Jews in the church, teachers of the gospel in the church, were creating these controversies among the new converts of the Jews who are slaves into Christianity. So they were creating this kind of false teaching in the church that if you come to Christ, you are not supposed to serve. You are not supposed to serve, because these Jews were teaching in their own, they were caught up in their own class, because the Jews, they are very class conscious. They do not want to serve, they want people to serve them. That was the teachings that they were teaching in that particular church. So I hope you understand in verse 3. Let's go to verse 4. The verse 4, okay, before we go to verse 4, these Jews, I quickly remember something in verse 3. Jesus Christ taught us to serve, and that is the doctrine that we are supposed to teach our followers, and that is what Paul was teaching. When you read something in Matthew chapter 23 verse 11, but he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. Jesus Christ said that he who wants to be the greatest must be the servant. But the Jews do not agree to this kind of teaching, so they were teaching the otherwise of what Jesus Christ taught us. Quickly, I hope you understand. So let's go to verse 4. Verse 4 says, he is proud, knowing nothing, but doting about questions and strifes of words, whereof cometh envy, strife, railings, evil submissions. So when you look at this particular verse, Paul is saying that these false teachers, they are proud. They are very proud because they are proud because they are not humble to serve. They are not humble to serve. Knowing nothing, these false teachers, they know nothing. They know nothing about the healthy messages of God, the healthy doctrines of the gospel. They know nothing. But what they do is doting about questions. They always question the truth of the gospel. They always question the good principles of the gospel. They always question. So there are some people in the church, whatever good thing you do, they question it, and they try to ask questions to prove their point, to give you a different teaching which is false, which is false. So let's look at some keywords in this particular verse. He is proud. If the Bible is for you, you can underline. He is proud. They know nothing and doting about questions. The questions here refers to idle speculations. You know, whenever something is, let's say the doctrine of service. So this doctrine of service, then they begin to ask questions about these services. You know, we need to serve. They begin to give they ask questions, ideal speculations. They give that ideal speculations. Then they dispute about words, meaning literally means that they battle with words. They ask questions, arguing in the church. Yes, you must not serve. They must serve. The slaves must serve. The slave must not. That kind of argument, serious argument, which created serious controversies among the new converts of the Jews. So it was causing a lot of problem in the church by then. So these false teachers, they always come with these terminologies. These Jews, they come with big terminologies because of their because they are educationally inclined. So they bring these kind of philosophies and terminologies, asking questions and bringing ideal speculations, which they meddle with the truth of the gospel. So it was really causing a lot of problem in the church. Why is Paul saying that they are proud? Because the humble servant accepted Christianity willingly with a doctrine of serving. When you humbly give your life to Jesus Christ, you are saying that I humbly want to serve God. I humbly want to serve whomever God puts me, and I want to serve people. So Christianity talks about service to mankind, but the converted Jews were constantly questioning the doctrine of Christians, the law with its classes, separations, and caused many to reject Jesus and his teachings because they do not conform to what they had been taught. So the Jews were not conformed to what Jesus Christ has been taught. So they were giving these false teachings, which causes the new convert to reject the teachings of Jesus Christ. So it was a very big problem in the church by then. So Paul was writing